everybody. Welcome. It's a bit dark here. Welcome to our live meet right after the True Self session. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm the facilitator, and I want to welcome all of you, but especially the co-facilitators, Annette, Denise, Cheryl, Becky, Julianne. So a bunch of people, trained energy workers, facilitate this session with me. We do this every month. It's a free session. It's open for everybody. And we read your guys' energy. We keep a protocol. So this live meet is partially here for us to comment and reflect on the session, of finding the right words, allowing you to find the right words to express these inner experiences that we are normally not used to expressing with other people. And also responding to your questions or your particular experiences based on the energies that we've read during the session. Yeah, so good. Yeah, everybody can chime in at any time. You just need to unmute your microphone. And I want to say that this was a very interesting session. It felt like we went through a whole entire journey here during this 1 hour of remote energy work. It started out like what I, as energy healer, would call a typical clearing session. I don't know if you've ever actually asked yourself what the differences are. It felt like there was just so much that was falling off us. It literally actually felt like that on my own body. Like things were being swiped off. Things, I'm just calling it like that. Energies, especially on the backside of my, well, I'm saying body, but I really mean energy body, because it's not something that, you know, is an actual sensation. It's this deeper feeling that work is happening and it's spontaneous. We also felt quite a bit of tension here around the throat and neck area, around the jaw. Actually, the session started with quite a bit of a tight jaw and some stiffness in the neck, and then followed by something that was more sort of around the head here, the eyes, the nose, the ears. Something was opening up here. So we called this area our third chakra area. This is our inner vision. And you all received instructions, and it's all about that. It's all about clearing up our vision when we want to go into this deeper connection, when we want to connect with our true self. It's all about bringing more clarity into our life, making sense, becoming able to connect the dots, things that are maybe not that obvious. And you know this about me if you've, followed some of the publications or the live meditations that I facilitate, that this type of inner self-discovery and self-healing has a lot to do with being willing to make the unconscious conscious. So it's mostly about this courage to really not just show up, but also to really listen within. Because what are we trying to connect with? And we say connecting with our true self. We're trying to connect with this part in us that can mediate between this, we call the soul self, this sacred part in us that is represented, depending on our spiritual contextualization, that part in us that is sort of above our 3D experience of ourself, the sacred self or soul self or divine self or higher self, if you will. And the true self sits in between this sort of, I try to avoid new age terms here, but you can tell by me, struggling with words, that it's hard to express. So the true self is the part in us that mediates between the unconscious and the conscious, between your soul self and your ego self, if you will. Ego in the sense of, the part of you that perceives you here in this 3D life, that has something like an identity to it. And this is where this session worked. It worked with this identity and the confusions, often also the controversies, the inner conflicts that come with these two parts, this what we often call inner dualism in us, this sort of immortal part in us, this what we call consciousness, sacred self or whatever, and then the 3D self, and the ego that clearly knows, we're not immortal, we're just here for this lifetime. Okay, better get our shit together now. Okay, time's running out. Okay, yeah. So this is what creates a lot of pressure in us, and it pulls us between those two dualities over and over again, where we, on one hand, feel there's a deeper calling into something that is more authentic, that is more me, and on the other hand, there is this part that says, yeah, but, we have to live here in 3D. I'm a mom, I'm a business owner, I'm a doctor, I'm a whatever those identities are. Yeah? And, well, I'm going to have to juggle this. You all know what I mean with this juggle, like straddling between two worlds. This is where the session worked, guys. This is my, wordy attempt to describe something that we all, on a deeper level, we all experience, but never really put a finger on it, never really pinpointed. And co-facilitators that were in this session with me live, so we connect live during the session and go through the session energies and how they are playing out with each and every one of you. Is there anything you would like to expand on? Anything you would like to share that you've experienced during the session, or what struck you, or what you noticed with this large group?
I was surprised. This is the first time I've done it when I had to be driving, and I thought that would work. But I felt very connected and very peaceful and very high energy, even though I was driving. So I was surprised. It was wonderful.
Okay. For professional reasons, I have to say that this is not recommendable, okay, to go into this deeper state while you're driving. However, if you are trained in doing this, if you're trained in going into this deeper place with yourself, then, and this is something that we practice here at transCODES, then it will become a natural development for you to wanting to connect with this part in you, even when you're doing other things. In fact, it's actually something that we recommend in sort of Buddhic traditions, maybe called walking meditation. What you just did, Linda, is an example of driving meditation. And I have to say that this requires a lot of practice, but it is possible to go into this place at any time in your life. I find it very easy to get there when I do repetitive things. And driving is something that if we have good control of this, that sort of naturally kind of lets us zone out a bit. You just need to make sure that the left part of your brain still, is still present with the traffic and everything that is going on. Now, someone who trains this actually experiences an expansion here, and will notice that you actually become even more astute in those places. So as your third eye vision opens up, you are not just tuning into the things that you pick up on with your five senses, but you can also pick up on other things. Just as an example here, I know I don't want to distract too much, but this is a tricky subject, but because you do need practice for this. But when you have that practice, you can even tune into foresight. I know that a lot of commuters, people who drive a lot, have developed this sixth sense, like knowing when the guy in front of you is gonna, just pull out or something like that before it's actually happening. So yeah, really, this is something that, of course, I officially can't recommend, but these are things that you will experience. I've once experienced a landslide energetically before it happened. So the highway went through the mountains and there was a landslide, and I could feel it before it happened. And so I sped up because somehow I got this inner prompting to just get out of here, because I was between, the highway was going between a valley. And what happened was that like a minute later, after I passed that spot, that canyon, there actually was a landslide and there was a lot of rocks and stuff on the highway. So yeah, trusting that inner guidance then becomes a whole nother level, really. But that's ultimately, if you think about it, why we're doing this. We're doing this to learn how to trust in our inner guidance. It comes from this deeper part in us that can communicate between, the conscious and the unconscious, the 3D and the unseen aspects of ourselves. Thank you for sharing that. Cheryl, Denise, I see your faces, but there's more people here. Becky, Sheila, what are you guys, Julian, what did you guys take away from this session? You guys were facilitators, so we actually talked about this during the session. What is your takeaway here? What would you like to share?
Very large expansion in six, like the third eye. So the knowing, the seeing, similar to what you were just talking about, when you know something. And it's still open here. Sometimes even after we close the energies of a session, like officially close the door, you can still feel processes taking place. It's almost like we're not quite done now or whatever. So when I can feel it open for me, just the reference feeling, at first I used to think there was something the matter with my nose. When I first started doing this, my nose would be all wonky. But now I know it's like it's the way it feels. Like there's an expansion inside of the head almost, which it's just weird. But
yes, for some people, the ears pop. Yeah, the nose can get stuffy. Like we want to sort of kind of get this out. And
mine gets big, like today I described it like there was 1,000 feathers coming out the end of my nose. Like it just, and it's very open in there now, and so it's a good time to pay attention, right? Because a knowingness will come in when that happens. And then the base was very wide. I said, it feels like my lower chakras are melting into the ground. So this vision came up, and I don't want to make it so much of a vision, but it was almost like a pyramid, and the third eye was the top of the pyramid, and it was very, very grounded. So the information was coming into a really grounded space, and then it's still very open here, and I personally like that feeling. It's open. It's cool. Anyway.
I want to comment just real quick on one thing here. You're referring to chakras, okay? Energy centers, and as energy workers, that's how we communicate with another. We use this as diagnosis tools. all right? It gives us a reference system to locate certain things in you know, the people's energy fields that we're working with, and we use ourselves as a reference system. So when we feel this happening inside of us, simply because we have the training, all right, then we know that this is triggered by the field that is created here through the whole entire group. This opening of the third eye, this vision, as you called it, Cheryl, or the clarity that then, you know, is supposed to come in, right? That isn't always happening for everybody, simply because it requires a lot of training to know what is what, to discern, you know, first of all, you know, how this feels like within yourself. So Cheryl just gave wonderful examples with how this physically feels, right? Then there's an emotional impact of that, because suddenly it feels like, whoa, you know, like everything is kind of opening up here, and that can be quite scary. Okay, for some people it can feel like their heads are falling off, or you know, like it's you know, it's big, so it feels like whoa. We have to be careful there not to get pulled in by this emotion of that sensation, right? So the sensation triggers an emotion in us, and then we need to be careful to not get triggered by the thoughts that then come up. Okay, so we have thoughts that interfere with that inner vision as well, that say, oh, I bet that means that, and oh, what did she just say? Feathers coming out of her nose? Well, those are all weird things, right? We talk about this like it's no big deal, because we understand, all right, that this is how energies, you know, how they sometimes feel, and we are not afraid of putting words to it. But I do want to just send this disclaimer real quick, that not everybody is used to this. So, you know, the way this could have also felt for you in the session is that you felt a lot of heat come up, that you felt maybe vibration, a lot of vibration. Okay, so like just like, ooh, and your energy being a little spastic almost. Okay, because this is quite a bit. Okay, I'm feeling this still, just like you, Cheryl, as I'm speaking. All right, so when that happens, it's very important that we recognize that it's kind of cool that it's happening, but when it gets too overwhelming, when it gets too intense, then our ego will try to protect itself from it. It will try to interfere, okay? The emotions are going to go like, whoa, what's that? You know, and our interpretations will be, oh, yes, it can be very distracting, exactly, Sheila. And it can also scare us to a point where, you know, the ego just simply starts checking out. We've had this during the session. There was a phase, I don't know, like roughly 20 minutes in, where there came this huge wave of sleepiness. And we all felt this like, oh, you know, so we felt super, super heavy all of a sudden and just wanted to check out. Okay. I don't know about you guys, but it took me 20 years to not fall asleep during meditations and energy transmissions, okay? Because obviously I needed a lot of time and, you know, attempts to work through this. I'm a kind of like a slow learner, okay? My system was not used to going into this place that I call deeper connection and allowing that other than in a sleep state. I'm the type of person that goes high energy all day long until I literally, you know, sit down and I fall over and I'm asleep. Okay, so I have no in between. So I really had to learn this discipline to stay in that space without falling asleep. But at the same time, you know, to feel my body, to ground myself. So I think, Denise, you said this too, right? We had to get up during the session and walk around a little bit, shake things off a little bit, shift the energy, disrupt, you know, sort of this inner pull of our own ego to just sort of handling it. Yeah. However, our ego handles things. Okay. So we needed to disrupt that a little bit by shifting the music that we were listening to. So this can be done in different ways. You know, by walking, by standing up. You can also, if you are sitting, you can also I usually take my shoes off and, you know, make sure that I really feel the ground touching my soles, at the sole of my foot, so that I know that I am actually touching the earth, okay? That I'm not sort of taken off. This can help to not fall asleep, to slow down the intensity a little bit. Sandra is sharing here in the chat. She says, as I'm talking about being tired, you felt very mental to start with, and then a great energy when connected. You kept coming in and out of connection. That too, Sandra, is very common. You're feeling lots of energies in your second chakra, so that is sort of the belly area. And Sandra, that's part of the clearing that we experienced. So depending on sort of what these things are that we're holding in, that we will feel symptoms in different areas. And since you are referring to chakras here, I want to just let you know, and you probably already know this, that the second chakra area, this lower torso area, belly area, that is where our emotional processing is energetically handled. Okay, so we did pick up on quite a few things that needed to be processed with all of you, with you particularly, Sandra. Let me look this up. You know, it's a very large group, so I'm gonna have to find you, and I'm gonna need my glasses. I should have written in bigger letters. But guys, please go ahead and keep sharing, okay? Because it might take me a while to find Sandra here in this long list.
Hi, I'd like to chime in. What I noticed, there was also a pull to inertia, which was like just going automatic, go, kind of like 3D, like a robot, and then shifting from that to like just being very present and sensing the, you know, like the moment and the environment and my body, and taking a lot of space, you know, like having compassion for oneself as we're doing this work, you know, of learning how to connect. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So yeah, those were the things.
Yeah. Be patient with ourselves. It's, you know, there was one huge thing that came up during the session. Thank you, Denise, for reminding me of this. It's almost like we felt proud of each and every one of you to just come here, to just show up, to just be here, because that in and of itself, guys, is already a prompting from your true self. All right? It doesn't matter what you experience. It doesn't matter if you have visions, or all these things are not relevant. What's relevant is that you actually consciously agreed to wanting to be present for yourself. And the reason why I keep using words such as practice and discipline is because it takes a while for our bodies and for our emotions and for our mind to adjust to this, okay? Because that is, you know, ultimately what we are not doing during the day, and why we are experiencing this conflict inside of ourselves, because we either there or there. And the ultimate goal is to become one, okay? Is to hear, you know, what our five senses have to say, and hear what our true self has to say, and learn to trust, okay, that sometimes those unconscious parts of us are the ones that block us. They are the parts that, you know, hold us back, like you described it. Yeah, so it's, and Janet, you commenting here in the chat, is really important to be practical about these things, okay? We're not, you know, promoting, blissing out and just checking out that way. This is not what meditation, what mindfulness is for. Okay, it can happen. You can have a very, very blissy experience. But the reason why you want to practice this inner true self connection is because you want to be fully present and not asleep. 50% of all your choices, guys, and that's neuroscience, are made on autopilot, are unconsciously made. 50, okay? And in reality, because we have something like this inertia that Denise was referring to, we have something like an ego that I was referring to, 98% of our choices are unconscious in some way, even if we think they're conscious. Because they're referring to something like comfort zone, or they're influencing our belief system, okay, like how we think we should be or should act. Those are all things that we would call unconscious. Cheryl also did a walking meditation.
Hey,
yeah, keep talking.
Oh, this is Sheila. I was just going to say that that's what I'm kind of still doing to kind of still work with that energy we just did, and what you mentioned about recognizing it's not just kind of blissing out or chilling out. It's noticing all the distractions or other things that come popping in, and practicing, recentering. So that's what I found to be really, important and a good reminder today.
Yeah, and again, this patience, right? To not get caught in this, like, how it's supposed to be, or what I'm supposed to experience, or whatever, this like sort of seeing myself from the outside instead of seeing myself from inside out, seeing myself from outside in, to break through that by just really being fully present. And if we have to, then we need to reset that, and it's practice. Yeah. Sandra, so I just looked at my protocol here. What I found with you, the way some of these aspects that we are talking about here relate to your personal energy. We talked a little bit about that, making a stance and really showing up for ourselves and consciously choosing versus unconsciously choosing. In your case, Sandra, it feels related to this inner self-talk, how you communicate with yourself. All right, and this was very strong, felt here on the, my left side. Okay, so I don't know this. Yeah, you're seeing this in the right way. So here on the left side, okay, the inner self-talk that is triggered by how, and I know this may sound a little weird for you, how other people see you, because somehow in your energy is also the code that you don't care about how other people see you. But I think that there is a bit of a conflict there, okay? So that you might tell yourself that you don't care how others see you. But a big part of your energy is actually in that space where you see, you look at yourself from the outside. And what this can do to us, it triggers sort of an anti-response in us. Okay, we call this the false self. Okay, not false as in wrong, false as in not true. Okay, so it makes us identify with a projection of ourselves. Okay, not necessarily projected towards somebody, but sort of like a sort of a glamour around us. Not glamour as in glamorous, but like in this sort of spell, a glamour spell, where we want people to see us in a different way. And the problem with the false self is that there is an identification going on, and our mind it gets mixed up. Okay, so in the end, with this projection of ourselves, we start believing in it, and the more we identify with it, the more confused we become about who we truly are. And this can play out in that, like really, almost like a bombarding inner. It's not necessarily a critical inner voice, but it is this constant inner dialogue that distracts from actually feeling the center. So for you, this session was all about that, to practice that, to say, nope, I'm not buying it. No, I'm not going there right now. This is where I am, you know, and I want to feel peaceful. Yeah. So do not let that come in, okay? Because that conflict, because when you're in your center, and this counts for all of us, when we are standing in our center, we are so much less susceptible to outer distractions. It doesn't mean that we cannot see them or that we are checking out, okay? It's like what we discussed in the beginning here with Linda, walking meditation, or, you know, going into this deeper place when you do other things. It actually augments the way you can see them. You can actually begin to see how other people see you and what that does to you, okay? So how it unconsciously alters your own behavior. I have this all the time, and because I do so much public work, okay, it cured me of it. Because I realized people are going to see me the way they want to see me, okay? So I can't influence this. I don't know who's watching those videos, you know, I can't, you know, whatever, I can't, okay? So I'm just like, whatever, you know, you either like it or you don't. Yeah. Yes, it's an old story, but very nice, Sandra. It's an old story that, you know, of fitting in. But then in your intellect, you know, you've already decided that you don't even want to fit in. But it's still there and it's still coming in. And this, by the way, was in other ways a big part of the session. It was about this decoupling from these predisposed beliefs, frameworks, however we think we need to be, or whoever we think we need to be, identifications. And the big healing medicine, the antidote that was shown in this session was to actually identify your true self and name it, you know, and start conversing with it. Name it. How do you do that? Well, that requires discernment. So you need to have something like a physical sensation or an energetic sensation or something that shows you that you're connected. Some of you may know this. This may sound a little inappropriate, but it really does work. If you can't connect, just squeeze your butt cheeks together, okay? This is totally first chakra, okay? Root chakra, but it sets something in motion, okay? Namely, you feeling yourself. And then obviously the known mindfulness tips and tricks such as breathing and all this, what we know, okay? But if you can't, if you have a really, really hard time, well then, you know, you can touch yourself. Tapping is derived from that. You can, but you know, sometimes, you know, it's just the easiest to squeeze a bit so that you know you're here. Becky, I think it was you, right, doing the session. You had a very strong feel of, I'm here, wasn't that? Yeah, like this is what I mean with calling it, you know, call yourself, I'm here, you know, and if you can't get it right away, something that communicates to you that you are in this deeper connection, then literally go into conversation with your true self. Say, hey, true self, I'm here. You know, yeah, I'm a little sick right now. I can't feel you yet, but I know you're there. Just because I can't feel you right now, you know, it doesn't mean you're not there. It just means that I still have to, you know, just sort of shed some layers that are blocking you. So you always do. Okay, but to you know, as a little trick for ourselves to personify it. And Linda is asking, the question came up a number of times, what is blocking me from feeling of receiving, having and giving love? Yeah, Linda, this is a huge question. I can refer to answers in the world literature. Okay, this is the biggest question. I think that moves all of us to a certain degree. The ego, of course, says, well, it's the others. Clearly, that's the reason. The others are the reason. Yeah. And then another part of our ego that says, oh no, it's all my fault. Okay, so these are the dualities in me, right? It's either all theirs or it's all mine. It's either all the wrong people or I'm not good enough. These are typical ego answers, guys. Your true self would never speak to you in that way. Simply because it's not true. Your true self can only speak truth. Okay, so neither of these two dualities in us, yeah, that it's something external or that it's all my fault, can be true. Okay, so you can work with this question, Linda, but it is too difficult to answer because, you know, when you are blocked, when you feel that there's a block somewhere, you cannot really expect an answer. Okay, instead, what you can do is ask for that which you cannot see right now to be shown. Does this make sense? There's a slight shift here. Yeah, just say, what am I not seeing? You can, of course, do it and use your intellect and say, okay, you know, I look at all my relationships, I see certain patterns here. Yeah, I'm also okay with owning my parts. Okay, but there's something deeper within me that makes it difficult for me. Okay, and that part, and this counts for all of you here, that part is in you. Okay, because love is a universal feeling. In fact, we know it is an energetic resonance. So each and every one of us is capable of feeling, receiving, and having love. The problem arises when we, like I've mentioned this in regards to the false self, think it has to be in a certain way. It has to come in a certain way. It has to look a certain way. It has to feel a certain way. Okay, and this is part of the mental construct that might be blocking it. Okay, because if you narrow it to, you know, it needing to show up in a certain way, okay, then, you know, you're really just in an echo chamber of yourself. Does that make sense? Okay, if you want to open yourself up to your inner vision and gain clarity about things that are normally unconscious for you, you cannot expect answers that sound like, you know, you're conscious, conscious as in like what you normally hear in your head. It cannot come that way, because if the answer was already there, you would already know the answer. It has to come from a different place. And that place, I can assure you and everybody else, is more, especially for women. So women tend to be more tactile, more kinesthetic in their perception. Is often more like a sensation or a feeling. Okay, and we can use sort of the breadcrumbs of maybe the handful of moments in our life where we actually felt something like that. Do you have moments like that, Linda? Okay, so then, you know, then it's easy. Do you know why? Because the reason why you don't know the answer is because how could you know? Right? You couldn't know it because you have no reference for it. Okay, so you see, the first shift was to, instead of asking for a reason or an answer, you know, to ask to see what you know, normally cannot see. And the other thing is to ask, you know, for something like a reference feeling forward. And that requires you to open up. So to ask yourself for being open up, okay? And what When I say this to you, I just felt something to open up. Okay, what happens then? There comes a voice. What does that voice say? What does it say just right now, Linda, when I talk to you? Turn your mic on, hon. We can't hear you.
I think that what you're thinking is that I would feel vulnerable, but when you said that, it sort of clicked for me.
Nice. Yes. So I felt that because there was immediately an objection in your sort of mental energy, right? That says open. Ooh, that means that feels scared. You just got your answer. Okay, that's what's blocking you. Your true self just gave you the answer. Okay, and yeah, this is hard for our ego self to accept because the ego self wants, well, it's because, blah, blah, blah. And here's the prescription. Do this, wear red socks, eat no more meat, yeah, and meditate 50 times a day. Okay, this is how our mind...
ego wants control. They don't want to open up.
Yes. Yeah, and that's understandable, though. We have to have compassion for our poor ego self, that knows, it's not going to live forever, it's hard, but we don't have to identify with it. It's just a small part of us, much bigger than that. Justine is asking for feedback from this session. Grace and water stuck out for you, Justine? Yeah, we felt that. Julianne, you had a lot of that, right, in this session as well. Justine, give me a moment here. Keep talking, everyone. Yes, open talks, Claudia. Open talks about vulnerability. Have that talk with your true self. Find out what it actually is that you're so afraid of when you're vulnerable. What does it mean? I mean, if I tell you, well, the only way to really experience love and, bliss and all this is to be vulnerable. I can do that, but, it's not that simple. It's much more complex than that. We have to investigate what in us judges vulnerability as something bad. Yeah. We have a lot of workshops that we do with the Sacred Self-Healing community, and we often talk about voluntary vulnerability. So maybe that's a key here. In general, the courage and the willingness to experience something that we're not sure, or to discern something, or to just go deeper than we normally do, comes with a curiosity, guys. And curiosity, well, it kills the cat, but it also opens up the unconscious. Without that, we cannot, without that curiosity, this honest self-inquiry and this calling to discover yourself, what you discover there, okay, is elation, okay? This is ultimately anybody who endures, okay, this true self journey where you first discover all the stuff that blocks you, but after that comes all the new stuff, all the stuff like, oh my God, I had no idea. I can feel that. Oh my God, I had no idea that voluntary vulnerability is actually a power. That's a power. You know why? Because you choose it. I choose to be vulnerable. Linda, that's how one receives love. Yeah, you choose it. Okay, even if there's a chance you might lose it. Oh well, can you control love? No. It's an illusion of the ego. Yes, and of course the inner child, Julian, always comes up with wanting to make the unconscious conscious. That always happens because that is mostly, and psychologists will agree, where, some of these unconscious and subconscious programs and patterns, where they're stored. They're stored in these earlier experiences where we didn't have the intellectual, emotional, and often also physical capacity to process what is going on. Yeah. So, and in addition, we literally are vulnerable as children because we literally have no power. So if we have experienced this in a traumatic way, then we will carry this memory with us. And this here in conjunction with karma, as I queued in the write-up for this session, plays a big role in the repetition of these experiences. Okay, like vulnerability. Okay, there is a part in us that says, "Oh, if you're vulnerable, that's dangerous, because that can hurt." And it's true. That's a true statement. But have we ever really changed anything by playing it safe? Have we ever actually experienced something new? Have we ever really grown beyond ourselves by staying in our comfort zone? Not really. So part of our, yes, exactly, Julian, part of our task as adults, as grown-ups, is to learn to discern what we can trust and when it's appropriate to choose to be vulnerable, and when we have to have very, very clear boundaries. That is the big part. And trust me, guys, literally everyone who begins to connect more with their true self will encounter inner child stuff, will encounter boundary issues, will encounter issues with love and giving and receiving. Why? Because those are the biggest subjects for us as humans. Whenever we talk connection, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the problems with connection, and they start with, the problems that we have with other people. They start with the problems that we have with connecting with ourselves. And by the way, there were quite a few of you, so if you're listening to this recording, quite a few of you who had beautiful experiences of inner connection. Some of you the first time, for the very first time. And some of you knew that feeling and just forgot about it. So the session actually ended on a really beautiful note, in a very expansive way. And it invited us to trust more in that inner connection. Justine, I'm still looking for you. You can send me an email or post in the forum for this session, by the way, for feedback. Yes, Janet, I'm hearing you.
There's been so many really cool things that came up, and I know this feeling, maybe it's just running through everything right now, but it was like this next step of connection in this world. It's this word of vulnerability. First, what came before that was like this kind of surface fear, but at the same time, to connect with yourself again today, it's like suddenly that becomes like, oh, I don't feel like wiping off the counter. You get that same feeling of wanting to procrastinate it when it's driving you around the whole time, which is so funny. And this vulnerability, right? I think in our the languaging of vulnerability and the emotion we've hooked to vulnerability in this language is such an outside projected thing that if we take this vulnerability inside, drop some of the definition and be like, you're going to be vulnerable with yourself, it seems a lot easier, because I've never put it that way, but that is kind of like what it's a bigger acceptance of yourself. So then there's a lot easier to be present in that moment and to actually decide by yourself to do that, rather than have to, you know, come to a group or something.
That's really the trick, Janet. You just really summarize it. The better you know yourself and, you know, accepted it as part of yourself, even your fears, you know, that's, okay, I'm terrified of what other people think of me, or I'm terrified what other people can do to me, or, you know, you know, it scares me, okay, that I cannot control certain areas of my life. You know, to just simply acknowledge that, okay, already activates something in you that makes you feel less vulnerable. Because ultimately, the reason why we spend so much energy and waste so much energy in trying to protect and hide those vulnerable parts is we don't want others to see it. We don't want others to discover it. And that is then what confuses us. That is then what brings our own confusion in, because we kind of lose ourselves in the process. So we no longer know who we truly are. Okay, we believe in these projections, okay, and think we have to protect that. When you are true with yourself, you don't have anything to hide. Does this make sense? Justine, for you, the session was mostly about this clearing of what I talked about in the beginning, of simply those random energies that are just flying by us. And when people are energetically sensitive, like you are, okay, this very same problem that I just talked about with identifications happens through identifying with every energy that flies by. And that distracts you. That makes you lose yourself. You no longer know, you know, the difference between just an energy coming in and you being in a certain state. And even then, we can learn, you know, to differentiate those. And I can say, oh, okay, I'm having thoughts come in right now, you know, that are not very nice, you know, or I'm having an emotion come in that feels like utter fear, okay? But that doesn't mean that I need to identify with this. I have a sensation in my body right now that feels like that. So again, here by acknowledging what we're sensing, feeling, and perceiving, we're already disrupting a lot of these distractions, because now we are here with us and we are, you know, literally, it sounds a little dumb when you say it, but we're stating the obvious. Okay? And guys, this is so simple when you get it the first time. You just literally have to state to yourself, oh, I'm here. I'm awake. People keep on asking me, well, how do I know that I'm conscious versus not conscious? And then I say, well, look me in the eyes and say, I'm here. Okay. Now you're conscious. And now try to hold this. Now try to hold this. Try to not get distracted by any thoughts, any emotions, any sensations, any movement over there, you know, any thoughts of your to-do list or anything like that. This is the difficulty. So yes, it is simple, but it is not easy to be present. And one way to practice being present is by acknowledging to yourself, a little bit like someone who reports to themselves. This is what I'm feeling right now. This is what I'm sensing. This is what I'm thinking. Okay, you train all that, you know, these different ways of perceiving yourself, and with it, the discernment. That's my tip for all of you here as a sort of a takeaway from this session. Okay, to remember not to identify with everything. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions, and you're not your body. Okay, yes, you are in this body. Yes, you are having these emotions, and yes, you are having these thoughts. But there is a pay grade above that, guys. That's called consciousness. The part of you that can observe all these different dimensions of yourself. And that's the one that you're tuning in when you're connecting with yourself. So this is what we need to learn to connect to. And when we can freely connect with this part, then we can also learn to freely connect with others. Because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when it comes to like fears and, you know, criticism and whatnot, my inner critic is probably the worst critic of all of everybody. There's nothing that can hurt me more than that sort of annihilating voice that I have inside of me. I've never met anybody who has said anything worse than what I already hear in my head. You know, not being good enough and so forth. Yes, Sheila, you agree with this. Yeah. So always remember that. Now, what are you actually afraid of? If somebody says, oh, you know, your glasses don't look good, you know, or your hair is kind of like unkempt or whatever, and what can that do to you? Nothing. It cannot disrupt the connection with the true you. It cannot make you identify with what other people say. It can only distract you and confuse you if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what this inner connection feels like. So that's what we're training here every month with this free session. Okay, and some of you were in the 12 days of Sacred Self. That's sort of like once a year in this time between Christmas and New Year's, I do a little bit of a series to guide people through some of the deeper processes at this time of the year. Excuse me. And this year I did 5 minutes alignment, 5-minute alignments with every Sacred Self days. And something came in very beautifully during this session, namely the energy alignment for, sorry guys, True Self, that I will send with the recording of this video. It's a very beautiful alignment. You can look this up on SoundCloud. Every publication has a link for SoundCloud. And there was 12 5-minute energy alignments. 5 minutes, guys, that you can use every day. You can switch it up every 12 days, okay? To connect within, to connect with this deeper part inside of you. Sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the co-facilitators. Sorry, I have something stuck here. It was a wonderful session, actually. We had to go through some of these distractions and all the blocks, but it was very, very beautiful. Thank you all for coming. You will all receive an email with the recording and a link for the 5-minute alignment. Thank you, everyone. Awesome.